In the heart of a forgotten town stood the bleak and oppressive Stonehill Prison. Its high walls and barbed wire kept the worst of criminals locked away. Among them was Marcus, a man sentenced to life without parole. He had spent the last 10 years behind the prison's cold iron gates, staring out at the horizon, wondering if he'd ever see the outside world again. Every day was the same routine, the same guards, the same concrete wall. But something unusual happened one cold, rainy evening that would change his fate. As Marcus sat on the edge of his cot, his thoughts as dark as the sky outside, he heard a soft sound, almost like a whimper. He stood up, looking out the small barred window of his cell. There in the prison yard was a dog. It was a stray, thin and battered, its fur matted with dirt, but its eyes, sharp and intelligent, seemed to be studying Marcus with an eerie focus. At first, Marcus thought nothing of it, but over the next few days, the dog returned, each time getting a little closer to the walls. And each time, its eyes never left him. Curiosity piqued, Marcus started to pay more attention. The dog had a routine. It came every evening, circled the yard, and then sat under a tree waiting. One evening, after all the other inmates had gone to bed, Marcus heard the dog's soft whimper again. This time, however, he saw something different. The dog had managed to slip through a small hole in the outer wall. It was close enough now for Marcus to see its weariness and determination. As the dog stared up at him through the bars, something unexpected happened. The dog wagged its tail, a glimmer of hope in its eye. Marcus couldn't believe it. Could this animal be trying to help him? He was a man who had given up on hope, but something about the dog's persistence reignited a spark in him. After days of watching and observing, Marcus realized the dog's daily visits weren't just random, they were deliberate. With no one watching, Marcus began to test a plan. Each night he would sneak small scraps of food through the bars. At first the dog was cautious, but soon it began to trust him. Over time, Marcus noticed a pattern. The dog always seemed to be circling the same area in the yard, always near the outer wall where the guards rarely walked. One fateful evening, as the dog paced near the wall, Marcus finally understood. There was a section of the outer fence that had been worn down over time. The dog had found a gap, a small hole that with the right push could allow a person to slip through undetected. Marcus's heart raced. If he could only get out, he could escape this nightmare once and for all. But how to get past the guards? It was then the dog did something that sealed his fate. It approached Marcus's cell, a thick rope in its mouth, an old weathered rope but still strong enough to help. The dog had brought it to him. There was no doubt now it was working with him. With shaking hands, Marcus tied the rope to the bars of his cell and threw it out the window. The dog barked once in the distance, and Marcus knew this was his chance. He waited until the guards made their rounds. Then, under the cover of darkness, he climbed down the rope, inching closer to freedom. The dog was waiting for him at the bottom, guiding him along the route it had discovered. Through the gap in the fence, they went sneaking past the patrols and into the woods beyond. Every now and then, the dog would look back to make sure Marcus was still following. After what felt like hours of running, they finally reached the edge of a small town. Marcus, breathless and battered, knelt down to the dog who was panting, but still full of energy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few crumpled bills. "I won't forget you," he whispered, giving the dog a final pat. "You're the only reason I'm free." With that, he vanished into the night, and the dog watched him go, its tail wagging softly, knowing it had done its part.